I don't want your money. I want you to ask me before you touch my fucking candy.
Yeah.
Ooh, we have a big topic today that kind of covers a no rules update. It kind of covers a Financial Friday. Most importantly, it covers a parenting viewpoint and strategy that I think is really important that we've been employing for a while now. And as I was reading through the comments of one of our more recent videos, I realized, oh wow, there's like a huge disconnect between the way we see parents and kids and money and the way a lot of the rest of the world sees it. A little bit of backstory. We released this video, it was a number of vlogs ago, called Making Kids Pay for Dinner on November 22nd. This video got a lot of reaction. We give our kids allowance, so they have plenty of money.
And it's not tied to anything they do. We just give it to them every week. They get a lump sum, usually their age, whatever their age is, we give that to them every week.
So a 15-year-old will get $15 a week for doing absolutely nothing. Then we have a set schedule that's we all agreed on, that is like consistent for the most part.
The schedule being certain events like family dinner that we have, or everyone does have certain things they contribute every week, but it's not tied directly to that allowance. That allowance is more freely given by us.
Different people make dinners on different nights. The kids make dinners, and on this particular night, Cami was making a dinner. 15 minutes before the dinner time, 3 of the older kids announced that they didn't want to come because they wanted to stay later at the mall. So the kids announced they're not going to be there, and we say, sweet, no problem, but we're going to ask for $5 per person for the meal that you're missing.
Because it's already made, already paid for.
And then the kids actually said, oh, never mind, we'll be at dinner, see you in 20 minutes. And we're like, okay, cool.
Because they decided that wasn't worth it for them to stay there for the $5 they would need to pay.
And we had a great family dinner, and as far as I know, from either us or the kids, there was no hard feelings, no resentment, or no frustration. The internet comment section responded in a different way.
My thoughts are, what if the parents didn't go to meetings every other morning, leaving the supervision of their children to another child, expecting them to look out after everyone, yet charge them when they miss dinner? They would only be out enjoying time with friends. What's the harm? How are they to know 12 hours in advance if they will be late or miss dinner? I would be depressed too. Some things are inaccurate about this. We have one morning meeting a week that Ben and I do. We call it our business meeting. When we leave an older child in charge of the smaller kids for that meeting, we pay our older kid to watch the younger kids. And they may not know 12 hours ahead of time. That's totally fine. Even if they knew 1 hour ahead of time, we might have not asked for the $5, but because this was literally 15 minutes ahead of time and the dinner was already paid for and made.
Well, there's this attitude, first of all, what's the harm? In any relationship, I would ask this question like, what if the tables were reversed? What if the kids made dinner for us, which happens, and then what if we just announced last minute, oh hey, we're not gonna be showing up? I think that's when you start to see what the harm is. I would expect the kids to be disappointed if we didn't give them notice and if they spent their time and energy making a meal.
I would expect even them to want a compensation for that. I'm not really sure what it would be, given that we pay for the ingredients, but they put time into it, so maybe we would pay for their time.
It doesn't need to be money.
Yeah.
That's what we've done because it's a little bit simpler, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But at least an apology or something like that does not seem out of line. But I think there's this assumption here, oh, you're the mom or dad. We have to make kind of bend over backwards for our
Sacrifices,
kids.
Yeah.
And they're not capable of providing back to the family. They're basically, kids are just consumers.
And these are our 3 older kids. So our 15, 17, 18-year-old that we're talking about here.
If kids go into the world that way with any other friendship or relationship or family member or job, and you're like, well, how are they supposed to know 12 hours in advance? Like, that excuse doesn't work for anything anywhere else. The way we view money, it's not this like sacred reward or prize. It's kind of something a lot more simple than that. So this wasn't a punishment for us. This was kind of 2 things. One is it's a method of communication. We're communicating, hey, this time was valuable to us, not just financially, but also financially. And the second is, I think money is also can be a teaching tool. And as parents, a lot of times, because money is equivalent to this status symbol, like when you get a raise, it's like the biggest thing. We don't see it that way, or at least we try not to. When you take those aspects away from money and you can just approach kids of oh, how can we use money as a way to go deeper in our communication or our teaching, it opens up a whole new realm.
I think the conversation is too much about the money. I think that it's more about showing respect. If there is an expectation of being home for dinner, that should be the issue. I think the money is a smoke screen. We expected you here for dinner. We made dinner for you. You didn't show up. This shows a lack of respect. I don't know what they mean by smoke screen. Maybe what they mean is we're not talking through why we're charging them money, but I think we are. I think they know the reason why we're charging you money. The respect thing, I think that would apply to any human. I don't think it's particular because we're the parents. I don't know if that's where they're going with this, but like we said earlier, if the kids made dinner for us and we didn't show up, I think that would be a lack of respect to them as well.
I guess I have a problem with this method or this emphasis on parenting for the kids aren't respectful and the kids ought to be respectful. Because it kind of assumes that showing up for dinner means that they respect you, and not showing up means they don't respect you. And there's a lot of reasons why kids do things. When there's penalties and consequences, a lot of times they do them based on fear, not out of actual respect. So although we equivocate it to respect, maybe your kid doesn't respect you at all, but just because they show up for dinner on time,
but they don't.
We're happy with them.
The consequences of not showing up.
Yeah. More than my kids' respect, I would rather understand their priorities and have them understand and communicate well my priorities. So if the kids decide at the last minute, hey, whatever's going on in the mall is really important to me. We're having a great conversation with our friends and we're having the time of our lives. I could approach that 2 ways. One is saying, you don't respect me by showing up. That's not necessarily true. It just means that they prioritize their time at the mall more than they prioritize my thing right now. And some parents are insecure about that. Sometimes I am. And it's easy to get defensive and point the finger at them. But the other way is to say, hey, this is worth $5 a person to me, this meal. I took the time and the energy. And if you don't want to show up, I want to accept your decision and your priorities. But also, I want you to respect this commitment that we made. And our way of doing that was by putting the price tag down, which can be a little weird, of $15 for the 3 kids. But then it's not getting into their field and saying oh, you're disrespectful or you're this and you're that. It's just saying, hey, we want to respect your priorities, but we also want you to respect ours.
I think respect is a loaded term, and I think it's something that's actually earned than just you expect.
Or forced.
I actually think respect is I like this person. You can't force me to like you. You can't force me to respect you. I don't think we can force our kids to respect us. I would hope they respect us, But if they don't, I'd like to know why.
This next comment is really long, but it's actually, I think, really insightful.
There's a fairly well-known study in which a daycare that was experiencing issues with parents picking up children late started charging a late pickup fee in an effort to get parents to pick up their kids on time. Rather than incentivizing the good behavior of on-time pickups, the late fees actually increased the number of parents who picked up their children late. But placing a monetary value on the unwanted behavior, it made the behavior socially acceptable. So rather than incentivizing parents to pick up their children on time, putting a price tag on the behavior turned it into a transaction which has different social rules and actually fostered the bad behavior. So this raises the question, what is the point of charging the kids for dinner? Is it truly only to cover the monetary costs you've incurred in purchasing the food? Or is it because you'd like to encourage the kids to be more respectful and considerate when it comes to making and keeping plans? My guess is that it's not simply the first. Ben has made an argument several times before, including in response to one of the comments on this video, that if we had friends who we consistently made plans for dinner with and they consistently canceled last minute, we would not make plans with them anymore. We would like to avoid this with the kids, which suggests to me that this is more than just about the cost of the food. After all, you probably also wouldn't be okay with friends who consistently stand you up for dinner plans, even if they always paid you. No, I don't know.
A lot of times, I mean, at least I do this. If I missed an appointment like a while back,
you're like,
and I was
I'll
like,
pay for
oh
your
crap.
next
I was
time.
like, dude, let me buy you lunch next time. I mean, it's a little bit more informal.
And for each person, their price tag is going to be different.
Yeah. And it seems weird, like, oh, I'm giving you money, but it's actually a way of saying, hey, I admit that I kind of fucked up on this one and I want to make it right.
Right.
You know, and some people are fine with just words.
And my point with this example, in case it's not clear yet, is that putting a monetary price tag on unwanted behaviors is actually not an effective way to discourage those behaviors. In fact, it's a really good way to encourage them. In the end, you're telling the kids that it's okay to bail on plans last minute as long as you paid someone for doing so. And that doesn't seem like the right message.
I think she's referring to the story that was in Freakonomics, which I read like 10 years ago. It's one of my favorite stories, where the parents were showing up late, so they create a fine.
Yeah.
Instead of parents showing up on time, they were like, oh, for 10 extra bucks, 15 minutes, great, I'll pay the fine.
More childcare, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I think where I differ from what she's saying is I don't see it as bad behavior.
Yeah.
And our primary goal isn't to discourage bad behavior. It wasn't to get them home. It was actually just to communicate
what the specific behavior does.
that it has an impact on us. Mm-hmm. So the lesson isn't always show up to meetings or always show up to dinner. To me, that would be a little bit too controlling, or a little bit
It's imposing a value on them that we have. And if you go to other cultures, they say dinner is at 6. They show up at 7, and that's like totally normal. It's putting like a moral value on a cultural expectation.
But I think she does bring up an interesting point, and that is that money is very limiting, and it doesn't work for everything, and it doesn't, like she says, it doesn't work in the real world where I'm like, hey, I just screwed you over and punched you in the face, here's $3, like make it go away.
Right.
But
and if you're poor, it's like, oh, well, I guess I don't have that tool in my toolbox.
Because our family is so large with 6 kids and 6 issues and things happening like all the time, like people are always stepping on each other's toes. Mm-hmm. Money is so simple and it's easy, and I think it's better than nothing. So like as an example, when our kids called us, or texted us rather, which isn't even a call, from the mall, and they're like, we're not gonna be there, we could explain like this 3-paragraph thing of how that impacts us. Or you can just say $15. And it's a hell of a lot easier to say $15, especially with the language with our kids. They know that $15 to us, we're not gonna feel disrespected, and we're not gonna take it personally. I do think it could be better if you have those conversations, or if it was just money, I think I would totally agree.
Yeah, which I think we do have those conversations, not every time because we don't want to or have the energy for it, but we do have some conversations at times. This is why I asked for this money, because it made me feel like this, or this was the consequence that you imposed on me.
In fact, I need to have one of those conversations. Dove and I had one scheduled today because she's like fucking always eating my candy. And I don't even buy candy that much. I buy candy like once every 4 months, and I buy it for movie night for the family, and she'll eat it. And she's like, I'll pay you back for it. And I'm like, I don't want your money. I want you to ask me before you touch my fucking candy.
Yeah. So sometimes money doesn't work. Totally doesn't work.
By far, the biggest comment on this video, and I think the reason why I got more dislikes than any video we've posted in a long time, is there was a common thread of people basically saying that parents should pay for everything.
Thankfully, my mom never charged me for all the meals I missed in my youth. I think this is more about control. I never once expected my kids to pay for meals. Exclamation point. If they weren't there for dinner, so be it. There was just leftovers for the next day. No food was wasted. Our kids are the most responsible and respectful kids out there. This is all about what you want and authority. They can't eat as leftovers. As someone else wrote, no rules means no rules. No problem as long as the parents are content, ruffle their feathers, and down comes the hammer. This pay for it bullshit should mark the end of your no rules era.
So this is where it gets like really fascinating to me. Because I can tell that people are really averse to charging their kids money. As if it's like a mean or a bad thing.
It's like, thou shall not charge your kids money.
Yeah, it's almost like loving kids is like giving them things for free. And
or fully accepting them is giving them things
without having any influence or clearly communicating even your expectations or hopes or possible resentments. Our parenting method is actually pretty different. We give our kids money, like Cami said up front, but then as a way of teaching, I look for as many things as possible that we can actually charge them for. When you charge them for things, when they have the freedom to pay for them, it actually gives them more power and control. This is from Gary V, who's like a guy that we follow, and I think he's pretty cool.
Over the last 3 years, I have received hundreds of thousands of messages from 15 to 25-year-olds telling me variations of stories of how much they love and appreciate their parents deeply, but deep down, they resent them and or hate them so much because while they continue to take their unlimited Uber from their parents, while they continue to take a brand new BMW on their 17th birthday, while they continue to be thrilled that their parents bought them their first apartment in New York City, they inherently deeply understand that they are a zoo animal and are completely unprepared to actually live in the world.
I love that video.
Yeah, someone might say, but he didn't talk about charging them for dinner. Like, he was talking about more big items like BMW, apartment. I guess he talked about Uber, which is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he comes from this luxury New York world, so he sees this on the extreme. But the bottom line is, there's a downside when you pay for things for your kids. Well,
it's interesting that, too, that those letters were from 15-year-olds all the way to 25-year-olds. So to me, it's like, where do you draw the line? It's pretty obvious to me I'm not going to pay my 3-year-old, you know, or my 8-year-old. But at what point do you draw the line with, okay, you missed dinner again? When they're old enough to go to the mall by themselves and then to stay at the mall, it's like, okay, well.
These are just 3 observations we've made of when you pay for everything for your kids, these are 3 things that happen. One is you rob your kids of learning. So it's nice, it's convenient, they get comfort and no hassle, but they also don't learn the lessons that come along with having to make choices and pay for things. The second is you create a sense of entitlement.
Entitlement is not privilege. Entitlement's a very important word for all of us because it means we have to look at ourselves, not look at the people that we're imposing it on.
When you pay for things for your kids, they actually start to see those things as necessary, mandatory, and they don't appreciate them as much as if they make the decision and buy it themselves. They just see it as something that they're entitled to. And the final thing is, and that's what he mentions in the video, is you retain control as the person who's paying for it. It's kind of subtle, and I don't think most parents realize that there's actually a deeper issue to why.
Like, I'm your sugar mama, I'm your sugar daddy.
Well, I remember even thinking this.
Take care of it.
You know, I used to buy a lot of people's meals when we'd go out, and it felt really nice, and I think it can be nice. But I actually realized that there's a psychology when I pay for someone's meal that it puts me in control and it gives me power. It's almost like you owe me one. And it's hard to acknowledge that, except for when you see the opposite side. When someone buys your meal, it's nice, but it can be hard also.
If you're always doing that for someone, you're not really allowing them, or they're not allowing themselves, if they're an adult, to have free agency over themselves. Like, they are autonomous, they're making their own decisions.
Most people continue to parent their children based on what they think other people think of them, not by listening to their actual children. This is a very important conversation. We have to start the process of listening to the youth. They're telling us the answers. You just care what your neighbor thinks about your kid. You just care about what your mother thinks about your kid. You just care about what your sister thinks about your kid. You need to start listening to your kid. And let me promise you, the deep happiness in perpetuity that you will have if you start with your child will change the course of your life.
Okay, I love this angle. I feel like this message, you will not hear this anywhere else. At least I have not heard it anywhere else.
Yeah.
Asking this question, how do we listen to our kids? But it's not a passive listening where you're just a bump on the log and you don't give any feedback. Like, we're in constant feedback loop with our kids, which even that $15 thing for dinner, you know, you could say it's silly, you could say it's not financial, you could say whatever, but it's a way of expressing to our kids how valuable mealtime is for us and how valuable our schedule is and our agreed upon decisions to be at certain places at certain times. Then we give them the information, but then you have to trust them to make the decision and listen to their priorities and values, which, by the way, I think statements like, "You're disrespectful," I think those things are not listening. They're actually, once again, doubling down and saying our priorities are more important than yours.
I do think it's important to listen to yourself first and then listen to them. Because if you're saying you're not being respectful, I don't think that's helpful. But instead, maybe you'd say, why do I feel disrespected? Not necessarily that they are disrespecting you, but why am I feeling this way? And then what should I do about it?
I want to get into how do we do this. The first is we give our kids money at as early an age as possible.
Yeah.
I don't think we really give money to Rainier yet.
We give money to Filia, our 8-year-old. We don't give her $8. We give her $4, and she's like been asking like, so when do I get?
So as early as you can either financially or emotionally handle it, we started giving our kids money. Mm-hmm. And then, and here's the second part, and this is probably harder than the first part. Mm-hmm. As soon as they can afford at all to pay for things, we let them. Which means we don't pay for them. We give them the money, and then also we give them the choice. And here's the thing, when you step in and pay for it yourself, you take away that choice.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed.
You take away preferences. It's really kind of fascinating because each of our kids are different. Like around, let's say clothes, for example, maybe it's around 11 or 12, we expect them to start paying for their own clothes. And
well, you say expect, like
allow them.
Yes, I actually think it is. Yeah. I mean, I want to toss that out there.
We don't get in the way. We don't get in the way of it.
Because I don't care if they buy clothes, but at least we're saying, here's the money.
Right.
There's Amazon.com, and there's the thrift store down the way.
Right.
And we have an Old Navy right there. You get to pick it.
Right, and that's where the preferences comes, because it's interesting to see some kids, how they spend their money. One of our kids is incredibly cheap, and they don't want to spend their money on hardly anything unless it's like a super good deal. So they'll wait and wait and wait, even though they have the money. Like, they don't care enough.
But they get to express that part of their personhood. I mean,
Yes.
let's contrast this to you for a second.
Right.
Your clothes were bought for you
At an
beyond
embarrassingly age.
past our marriage.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, you were getting pajamas in your 30s, and you like stopped wearing clothes
nightgowns
to bed.
Yes.
10 years earlier. But I think it was a way for control to be like, well, I'm buying you this clothes, and it's nice and generous, but also we get to decide what you wear.
Right.
So this has been hard. Like, I remember some of our first tension, let's just say 5 years ago, when we started giving our kids money and we stopped buying our kids shoes. Mm-hmm. Seven in particular, he would have like crazy holes in his shoes.
And he'd ask me, he'd say, can you buy me some shoes? I need some shoes.
And we're like, you have $300 in your bank account.
That's what you were like. And what I was like is, I'm thinking back to my childhood. I'm not even conscious of this, right? Because my parents were buying shoes for me, I just automatically felt like I ought to buy shoes for him. And I didn't really think, oh yeah, we're giving them money every single week, and he's got a lot of money. And
well, and for some reason, it's not valuable enough to him.
Yeah. And it feels good. Like, as a parent, it feels good to buy them shit.
Well, and on the flip side, I think this is also what you were worried about. If you don't, you feel bad. Because other people on the block see our kids with holes in their shoes. You felt like, oh, we're going to look like bad parents.
And you're wearing Yeezys or whatever, And it's like...
Oh yeah, I am, because they're worth it to me. But it sounds so weird to shortchange that process and just be like, well, I'm going to buy you shoes. And we chalk it up as being unselfish.
Yeah.
But it's really a way for us to look good as parents. And that's what Gary Vee just said in that clip.
Yeah.
We're actually now not doing what's in the best kid's interest. We're taking away control.
We care what our neighbor thinks. We care what our sister thinks. We care what our mom thinks.
We're now parenting our kids to look like a good parent instead of what's actually in their best interest.
Yeah.
So let's just talk very briefly about a few other things that we have had kids pay for in the past. And this could be complicated, you guys. This is not meant to be, I mean, like, you can shoot our list down if you want, I don't care, but...
This is just our personal list. Everyone's got their own list.
This is what's worked for us. And you can do what works for you based on what you want to teach your kids and what you find valuable as parents. But we've had our kids pay for heat. Like, if they want to run a heater in their bedroom 24/7, because we don't keep the house like at a certain temperature. And once again, they have the money to do it. So if they decide it's valuable, they can pay for it. I mean, it's even us paying for it in a way, because we're giving them the money. Like longer showers, and we don't do this anymore, but before no rules, we used to do, hey, with 6 people in the house, you can have a 10-minute shower. And if you want to go beyond that, it's 10 cents a minute. Like extra snacks, we pay for our food, but if you want candy, you got to buy it yourself. And you already mentioned like clothes, and I guess right now we're having Dove. She pays for her own insurance and her cell phone bill. That's all her choice.
We still pay for music lessons, even for Dove. We still pay for haircuts.
Now, this is what we've seen. We already shared with you guys the 3 things that come about if we pay for everything. When kids start paying, this is what we've seen that they learn. They learn consequences and natural results of things. They learn about limits. They learn, oh, if I spend $15 here, that's $15 less I have to here. And we don't have unlimited spending power.
And they learn about themselves. I think for me, I really didn't know my preferences till much later in life because of how I was raised and because of partially my personality. But those 2 things coming together took
They
a long
learn
time.
about long and short-term goals, and like, oh, if I save, I can buy bigger things versus if I buy a bunch of small things. And this is where it gets really important to me. This is the stuff that's the most exciting, because all those other things, those are like economic lessons that they can learn in an econ class or just with money. But these other things are much harder to teach and the much more valuable lessons. And those are things like confidence. They learn that their values are just as important as ours. And I can take $5 and go buy something, but with their $5, they also can make a decision, and they can learn to be not just good at making decisions, because I don't want to sound like it's moral, but their decisions are just as valid as ours.
They can own their decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
They learn independence. Like, probably most importantly, independence of thought. They learn that their values matter. Instead of just saying, like for our kids that were at the mall, when we say $15, instead of just saying, oh, by you not showing up to dinner, you didn't respect me, which kind of implies that the respect should go one way, like uphill, like we're more worthy of respect than you.
Or respect looks like blank as a blanket statement instead of respect looks different for different people.
At different times.
Different times, yeah.
It says, hey, we also respect your decision to stay at the mall. And I want to learn to respect my kids' values. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to cost anything. And like I said, the way I ask it is if we were to reverse it, would it also be true? So if our kids were to make this elaborate dinner and we were to just not show up, I would expect we should do something to make it right. Whatever, and that would be a complicated kind of conversation maybe.
I mean, for some people, maybe it's just having that conversation of, hey, this made me feel really shitty when you didn't show up.
And finally, the thing that I think they learned is that they actually have a choice. And a lot of parents, the model is you have all the choices, like you lay down the rules, and then when they leave the house, that's when the first time they get the choice. One of my favorite roles as a parent is to watch the kids make choices while they're under the safety of our roof, and to be able to talk about those choices with them by their invitation, and be invited to provide feedback and share like what we've learned and hear what they're learning. I think that's such a cool process.
It's hard though. Like, I think it's cleaner or something to not have them live under your roof while they're learning all those things. I mean, there's a lot more conflict, I think.
Yeah.
As they're learning those things.
But deep down, I actually think we have this belief in our culture that kids are incapable and they're a bunch of consuming idiots that they don't have the capacity to buy things.
Especially teenagers, yeah.
Yeah, and it means that we look down on them. One of my absolute favorite stories that I fell in love with before there came to be 200 books was the Boxcar Children. It was that ultimate story of these kids. They were like middle school and younger.
Yeah.
And they're like forced to provide everything for themselves. And at least in the book, and I'd like to think this could happen in real life,
yeah,
they fucking figured it out.
Yeah.
And I've been so surprised. I don't always like it, but our kids know how to figure it out. If we let them. If we get out of the way.
Yeah.
As we end, I know this has been a longer video, but I think it's been worthwhile because I just don't hear this stuff talked about other places. A lot of the feedback we got for this video was not negative. It was positive.
Rilla says, I thought I was the only parent who charged their kid for things. I was talking till I was blue, asking my son to turn lights off when he left a room. It just wasn't happening. I told him if he wanted to pay for the electricity, fine. I would collect 25 cents every time he left a light on. I think I collected less than $1 before it suddenly was no longer an issue. There's other examples that are a bit more complicated, but I think it teaches kids to respect the fact that real life has a cost and actions, choices have consequences.
I love how she pointed out that she's teaching the kid to respect the cost itself instead of respect her.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to be like, you left the lights on. You don't care about me, or you're not respecting me. And we totally like internalize it.
Yeah, make it personal. Raising Wildflower says, seems reasonable. My kids are not at the driving age yet, but they pay for meals outside the home. They're 11 and 13. We buy groceries, but eating out is an extra for us. When we're out, they can either pack a lunch or buy something with their own money. Dude, wow. At home, they help cook and prepare meals, so contribute that way at home. In your example, missing a planned family dinner when groceries were bought and prepared for them is disrespectful, and financial contribution is a very realistic consequence. Man, they take it even further than we have, and they have them buy their food when they go out, looks like. Unless, I don't know.
Love it.
Jeff says, I kind of like the concept that you've come up with. It's interesting. I never would have done something like that with my kids. I simply demanded that they arrive on time for a planned family meal. But I like your way better. If I were a kid, then I have a choice to make.
I would say that using the word demanding sounds a little bit harsh, but when they were younger, there was a lot less choices. And the older they've gotten, the fewer demands we want to place on them.
JH says, brilliant. Natural consequences. It's your responsibility to teach your children how to be responsible for their choices in the big world. There are consequences for every choice. I raised my large family in this manner. In fact, when I kept finding shampoo bottles with lids open laying on the shower floor, draining the contents right down the drain, I decided to get everyone their own refillable shampoo bottle, and they then had to pay to have it refilled. Immediately, there were no more shampoo bottles left laying in the shower, draining right down the drain. Imagine that.
That's such a fun example, because it's so possible to see this person as a tyrant.
Right.
Oh, you're a money grubbing whatever, like you're making your kids pay for their own shampoo.
Yeah.
But the other way is, as an adult, they're going to appreciate shampoo and the cost of it and efficiency in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise. It's like a gift.
They took a frustration that they had and turned it into, a lesson, basically. Like, this is what needs to happen.
Or even better yet, a potential frustration. Because, a lot of times, if you perpetually pay for the shampoo and you never deal with it, you will actually be frustrated as a parent. You're going to want to kick your kids out of the house faster because you see them as a drain. But when you catch these things early and you take what could be a frustration or resentment and communicate it, I love that.
Yep. Sarah says, for all of you who are upset, try seeing it this way. If you made plans with your friends, the Crawfords seem to see their kids as their friends, unlike a lot of parents today, to have dinner every Thursday night, and they just didn't show up multiple weeks in a row, you probably get annoyed with them because you spent the time and money to prepare a meal for them. It sounds like Thursday night dinner is a thing of the Crawfords. Their kids know this. If they knew they weren't going to make it, they should let them know ahead of time or be there because they agreed to be there. It's not about rules in my mind. It's about courtesy to the people cooking dinner for you. I see where people are coming from when they say, so glad my mom didn't charge me for dinners I miss, but I think this is a little different because of the way the Crawfords choose to do relationship with their kids. They don't use their authority as parents to force them to do things, but they most likely agreed on Thursday night dinner as a family in one of their family meetings. The one thing I'm still thinking through is asking them for money. Would I ask my friends who canceled last minute or didn't show up over and over to pay for some of the ingredients? I'm not sure. I think it would depend on my relationship with those people. Is this using their authority as parents to make them come home or pay for food they bought? If it weren't for the no rules rule, I don't think I'd be asking this question. Where as a parent, do you draw the line of no rules but still teach your kids valuable life lessons? You could talk to your kids about the importance of that meal and let them know it hurts when they just miss it with no warning. Just thinking out loud here.
This comment has so much understanding and observation of what we're actually about and trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
I just had to read it to make myself feel better. I feel like this person understands a lot of how we're operating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even we have people being like, oh, you're following no rules, which first of all, don't fucking put rules on me for how to follow no rules.
It should look like this.
No rules. The purpose of it was actually to clear away these kind of social constructs so we could get to the essence of what our relationship with our kid is about and what we want it to be. So it's not about no expectations or no hurt feelings or no love. A lot of what we're trying to do, and I know it's weird with money, so I'm not going to defend the $15 thing, but if you don't say something, I feel like it will actually cost the relationship in the long run.
Elio says, I mean, it makes sense, although I personally think it's harsh. The only reason I think it's harsh is because when I was that age, I would not have been equipped to handle something like that, which is completely on me and my family. But as for your family, I feel it makes sense because you have equipped them to handle such situations. And it's not like you're charging them money without them even having money or having the potential to make money while in your household. The whole situation reminds me of when you make an appointment to go to the doctor's. If you don't cancel ahead of time, you still get charged money. In my opinion, you are teaching them something that could happen in the real world, and you know they can handle the situation, so it works for you guys, and that's really all that matters.
That person's my hero. We're still figuring this out, A lot of the no rules thing that we started in January 1, this is what's come about.
I don't think we're naive to the fact just because we say no rules doesn't mean that there's still hierarchical things going on. I mean, we're still their parents, they still live in our house, they're still only 15 or whatever. But this was just our best way to start paving a path for them to become adults and for us to start treating them more like adults.
Okay, we got low battery. What'd you guys think of that? I am so anxious to hear your thoughts. Thank you for all the feedback you guys left on the previous video.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear if this is a new concept, if this is an old concept for you, what you agree with, what you disagree with. Be nice to each other, be constructive in the comments. Thanks, guys.